Good day. Welcome to the Travel Companion podcast. Special guest today is Anna. She's here in studio in Chiswick and she is director with FlightFree. As you know, we talk about responsible travel, sustainable travel, and volunteering. We touch on organizations and people that are doing the right thing. With Anna, we're going to talk about reducing the amount you fly. This is the easiest way to make a meaningful reduction to your carbon footprint, and there are lots and lots of alternative ways to travel. What Anna would like to do is reach 100,000 people that will make the pledge to be flight free in 2020. So there's a lot to talk about. I learned quite a bit as well. For one, the difference between flight shaming, and what she is asking people to do. It was actually, I must say, very inspiring to have her here on the podcast. If you would like to make the pledge or would like to know more, please go to her website, which is flightfree.co.uk. If you would like to support the podcast, please go to our website at podcasts.earth. Without further ado, here's the podcast with Anna from FlightFree. I am here today with Anna. I won't pronounce the last name. Could you do that for me?
It's Anna Hughes.
Oh, brilliant. I could never pronounce that. And Anna Hughes is a director of FlightFree UK.
Yeah, that's correct.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Peter.
Brilliant. And now there's a lot of articles and a lot going on, as a matter of fact. In New Zealand Herald, they say that there has been quite an effect on air travel lately. And, well, in Sweden and everyone else already talks about Greta Thunberg. And I believe that you mentioned something like 9% reduction. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there was a 9% reduction in domestic air travel in Sweden last year.
Okay, that's quite significant, isn't it?
It is significant, yeah. Similar figures, I think, are being shown in Germany as well. So there are other countries that have seen similar drops in air travel.
Really, and international is like 4%, right?
So in Sweden, the 9% refers to domestic travel. 4% refers to international flights from Sweden.
Right, brilliant. Okay.
But overall, still flights are going up.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. She's inspiring people to refuse traveling on planes. It's called FlygSkam. I hope I pronounced that correctly as well. Basically, flight shaming.
It's not flight shaming.
No, it's not flight shaming.
Flight
FlygSkam
shame.
is not flight shame.
They're totally different things.
Okay, what's the difference?
Okay, so flight shame would be the feeling that you have of climate responsibility and awareness that what you are doing is not good for the environment. It's an internal feeling and it's something you do to yourself.
Okay.
Flight shaming is when you would say to someone else, you shouldn't be taking that flight because it's really bad for the environment or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't do flight shaming. We don't really like flight shame either, but, you know, we can't deny that it exists. And if it does encourage people to fly less, then fine. But we don't push flight shame. We definitely don't do flight shaming. And what the thing is here, it's been perhaps misrepresented by the media. So because it emerged organically, FlygSkam, flight shame, it was then sort of taken in a different direction.
You think in a negative direction?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So now lots of stories will lead with a headline that uses flight shaming to, you know, get people to read it. And we have, so here at FlightFree UK, we've been described as part of the global flight shaming movement. And I always categorically say there's no such thing as the flight shaming movement,
do you hate that,
definitely not part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not that we hate it; it doesn't exist.
Okay, no, fair enough. I didn't even realize that. That's good. They say 27% said they would consider reducing future flights for environmental reasons, which is very good, up from 20%. And you at FlightFree, tell me about it. What do you do? Why do you do it? And how do you do it? Do you have partners?
So, yeah, we at FlightFree UK, we're encouraging people to fly less. So we're asking them specifically to take a year off flying. So we're running the FlightFree 2020 pledge. And the idea is that you change your behaviour on a short term, which hopefully influences longer term behaviour change. We seek to inform people of the climate impact of aviation, and we seek to inspire them to travel by other means. So those are kind of the two pins holding together our whole campaign: information and inspiration. We're using this year off pledge as a a kind of a springboard for greater awareness, maybe a social shift away from aviation. Because for many people, when we think of international travel, we think automatically of flights because that's how we're pushed towards by the advertising industry, perhaps. And that's also, you kind of do what people around you do. So if everybody in your social group is flying to Croatia on holiday, then you're not going to think twice about doing the same. So by having this pledge, we're asking for 100,000 people to sign our pledge.
100,000.
Yeah, so that's our target. And by having the pledge, it shows that you're not just one person changing your behaviour, you are part of a larger group changing your behaviour, and that's where social shift can start to happen.
Absolutely. So 100,000.
That's the aim, yeah.
Yeah, and how many people fly here in a year, you reckon, normally?
I don't have the figures for that, actually, in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah,
Roughly,
no, I don't know.
it's like, what, a couple of million? Or how many people live here in the UK? Like 80 million or something, right?
Yeah, so in any given year, only 50% of the population would get on a plane.
Right. At once or more than once? Or
So that could be any number of times.
Right.
But yeah, so
that's be 40 million, basically, roughly.
I guess so. A lot of flights are taken by, the majority of flights are taken by a small percentage of the population who are repeat flyers. So, lots of people are frequent flyers. But yeah, we Brits fly more than any other nation. But yeah, around half of the UK population will get on a plane in a set year.
Fair enough. For holiday or business, do you know that?
So most of the flights are for holidays.
Yeah.
So 64% of flights are for leisure, and then only 9% are for business, actually, which sounds like a very small number and does surprise a lot of people because lots of people imagine that it's the businessmen flying all the time that are creating all the pollution, but actually it is our leisure travel.
So it's 9% business, but
yes,
they fly business class or... first class is worse for the environment.
You're absolutely right
yeah.
there. So per person emissions, if you're travelling business class, will be higher because you're taking up more space.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. It says here on your website, it says aviation currently makes up less than 5% of global emissions.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically you say that's because most people never been on an airplane.
Yeah, so less than 10% of the global population have ever been on a plane.
Really?
Yeah. Again, that's quite surprising. And it is surprising for us here in the West because we are part of the group of people who fly a lot. We just therefore assume that everybody does. And no, that's not the case. The vast majority of the global population have never been on a plane.
Right. And I saw on your website, there was an article there, a blog. You said something like you had not been on a plane yourself for over 10 years.
Yeah, so I haven't flown for more than a decade, yeah.
Wow. That's quite amazing.
You say that, but for me, it's just normal, I still travel.
You still travel?
Yeah.
What's the last time you went somewhere?
So I've just come back from Amsterdam.
Amsterdam?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get there?
So we went by Eurostar.
Eurostar, brilliant. Was that expensive?
Not really. It was 45 quid.
45 quid? Was that return or one way?
No, that was one way, and then I can't remember the return price actually.
How long did you, before you actually went, did you book that?
About 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
That is not bad.
No.
Because, maybe because last time I went to Holland was for King's Day, and I was looking like a couple of months before. It was like over 250 pounds to take a train, and the flight was like under 100 quid return. Yeah,
that's where the difficulty lies, doesn't it? Because we often, the prices of alternative travel, mostly by train, is not viable for lots of people because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't mean that it's always that expensive because there are plenty of cheaper fares out there.
Did you go during the week or was it over the weekend or?
It was. I went out on a Tuesday.
Okay.
Returned on Friday actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was
Friday should be a lot more expensive to.
It was a bit more expensive to come back. I genuinely can't remember how much.
No. That's absolutely fine. I think that's a problem though. That's other means of transport are so expensive, and if you look at a country like Luxembourg, they made all public transport in the country free.
Wow, that's amazing.
Is that something maybe you should campaign for here? Because I would like that. I would love that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would not take any plane anymore as well.
Oh, you're right. And that's something that needs to change desperately because we can't expect people to inconvenience themselves or, go to a more sustainable mode of transport if that's not easy for them. And price is a massive, massive factor in that. We desperately need to restructure the way our transport is put together, from the frequency of trains, the availability of night trains, for example.
That's changing, eh?
Yes, it is. More night trains are coming in across Europe, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But a fundamental part of this is price. And in fact, comparatively, in general, flying is much cheaper than train travel, mostly because there is no tax on aviation fuel. So
that should change for sure, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. So
do you know why that is?
It was by international agreement many decades ago when the aviation industry was a fledgling industry.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that it was to give that industry a leg up at a time when it was coming, starting to be promoted as a way for people to get around.
Yeah.
And that has never been rescinded.
Right.
It's a bit complicated of how states would be able to introduce the tax on aviation fuel, but they certainly can, and they certainly should.
They should.
So it doesn't give a level playing field in terms of the price that we are being asked to pay for stuff.
Yeah.
We very much believe that the environmental cost of travel should be reflected in the price of the ticket. And if you're looking at let's say the Amsterdam journey, if you're traveling by Eurostar, your CO2 saving will be at about 90% compared to the flight, which is a huge, huge saving. I'm not suggesting that the train ticket might be 90% cheaper than the flight ticket, because there are obviously other considerations. But, that shows you just the difference. And if we're factoring in environmental costs, which we desperately need to do, then, the prices need to be
drop for the other.
Absolutely.
I must say, if the trains were like the same price, I would take a train as well, because it doesn't actually take any longer to take a train. Because if you go by plane, you have to go to the airport, you have to wait for 2 hours because you have to be there 2 hours before departure. And if
absolutely, short haul flights, you're spending most of your time on the ground. There's no comparison in terms of ease and enjoyment and time with the train. So the price needs to be leveled out, but there are certain circumstances where you can just get a nice cheap train ticket. So it can work.
It can work out. I love traveling by train. I've been all over the world by train. The Trans-Siberian and through Africa even. I didn't take a plane at all when I was there for a year and a half, except to get out at a certain point. But still, it's a much better way of transport, and it's definitely better as well. Do you hope that here in the UK you'll get the same response as in Scandinavia, as in Sweden?
I would really like to see us move away from air travel, yes.
Yeah.
I feel that in many ways we're behind our Scandinavian neighbours. They seem to be a bit more of leaders in terms of green initiatives and green behaviours. But that doesn't mean we can't do it. And
you're doing it. You're promoting
exactly,
it.
So, and we have, since we launched the campaign, we've had so many comments of people saying, oh, thank goodness, I used to feel like I was the only one, and now I don't feel alone anymore. People have been aware of the carbon impact of aviation for a long time and have been taking action. So it's nice to kind of bring a community of those people together, and also reach a new community. So there are also lots of people on our pledge who've said, oh my goodness, I had no idea that was the impact of aviation. I'm not going to do it anymore. Maybe for good or just for the year. And that's been really inspiring as well. So people who have been frequent flyers in the past are now reducing or completely cutting out air travel. Overall, I hope that we will see a fall in demand for flights.
Yep.
And the last 2 quarters, there has been a drop in the UK.
Like what?
Not a couple of percent.
Okay.
So we haven't yet seen the figures for the next quarter.
Sure. No, so it has been a drop. Has been a drop. Yeah.
And it's hard to say then if that's a glitch or not.
Yeah.
But not a glitch. I mean a blip.
Yeah, sure.
If that's a blip. But so it'll be really interesting to see the most recent figures when they come out and see if we have been having an impact kind of over the longer term.
Or not. So, yeah. Even if not, do you think it will continue this over the next coming years? Do you think it's a phase which will die out, or do you think it's actually people getting more aware of it now and they actually going to really think before they book a flight or book any transport?
I hope that it's not just a phase.
Right.
I hope that it's something that's long term, because people have been campaigning on this for decades.
Yeah.
You know, I became aware of it, as we said, over a decade ago. But I certainly wasn't the first either. You know, there are many people from campaigns like Plain Stupid and Franny Armstrong, who did The Age of Stupid, the film with Pete Postlethwaite. There and before that, you know, there were so many that there has been a long history of awareness of what we should be. What's happening with aviation in terms of the carbon impact. But I hope now, maybe it is that the conversation has shifted. Maybe it is that awareness is reaching enough of a level for it to not go away now.
Okay.
Because previous campaigns, so we're asking people...
Not go away or grow? Obviously, you hope it will...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And previous campaigns that have asked people to stop flying have been... you know, have attracted a few hundred or a few thousand people, but we really feel like this movement has got more momentum, it's got more people behind it, and hopefully, you know, we're going to come into the mainstream.
And when did you start a movement? 100,000 pledge?
So we launched the campaign pretty much a year ago, actually.
A year ago,
So I've been collecting pledges for a year now. And it was running in Sweden the year before that,
Right.
so they've been running for a couple of years now.
Yeah, okay. And it has been successful now, I take it?
No, none of the countries have reached 100,000 yet, but the success isn't just in the numbers, it is about raising awareness.
Well, people are talking about it, and you're in the newspaper, so that's a success, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And the fact that there was a 9% drop in domestic air travel in Sweden, I mean, that shows that it's a massive success, you know, so, people are
not going on holiday anymore international as well, so is that a good thing, you think, or...?
So holidays is it's difficult because we don't
travel.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want people to stop travelling. We just want people to travel by different means.
Sure.
Or we want to present the options. So you know, it's everyone's free choice and everything else. We would like people to make choices that do bear the environment in mind. So if you are in the habit of going to Croatia on your holiday, great. You can still go to Croatia,
sure.
But rather than a 2-hour flight, it will now be a day and a half journey, which sounds quite horrible when you think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to sit on a train for a day and a half. But actually, the journey is part of the holiday, and the things that you see out of the window, I mean, that's enough of a reason to go on the train. You know, the slow journey between the UK and Croatia, oh my goodness, absolutely mind-blowing scenery. And the actual process of the travel is quite enjoyable as well. So sitting on a plane, it's something that you endure, and a lot of that journey will be spent standing in a queue. Sitting on a train is something you can enjoy, you know, and the kind of horrible admin bits either side aren't long at all. You can relax for the whole time. You can get up whenever you want. You can bring your own booze on board, all of that kind of stuff, you know. So it's a much more enjoyable and authentic travel experience. And that is part of what we're trying to promote and push in terms of a mindset shift. So it's not about your holiday starting when you touch down on the tarmac. It is about starting at the beginning of your journey and the journey being part of it.
Absolutely, and I love slow travel. I've done it for 4 years, so I totally agree. Except for night trains, because then you can't really look out of the window. You just
that's
sleep
true, but that's another way of doing it. So if you don't want to spend all day on a train, you can spend all night on a train instead, and you know, save on a hotel. Yeah,
you save some money at the same time. That's true. This is absolutely true. Now, so I love it, but there's also some people who say, well, you know, air travel first of all is more sustainable than you think. I think I did an interview a couple of months ago, and basically, contrary to what many people believe, global aviation only contributes 2%. He says, which is. Don't think that's right. As a matter of fact, it is more than that. Still too high. They say they're doing a lot to reduce net emissions by 50% by 2050. BA, for example, just very recently committed to that, but 2050 seems to be a very long time away.
Yeah, it's very easy to claim aviation is sustainable.
More sustainable.
Yeah, I would be very cautious at any claim along those lines. There's no such thing as a carbon neutral flight. In terms of the 2% emission figure, there are estimates. I mean, all of this is only
Does it
estimates,
depend on the
isn't
country, maybe? Or?
No. So that's a global figure. Yeah.
Okay,
So some people say that 2% only accounts for the CO2, whereas if you include all the greenhouse gases for aviation, it's up to 5%.
Right.
So we often say aviation is responsible for between 2 and 5% of global emissions, just so we can cover that. However, that, as we've already said, less than 10% of the global population has ever been on a plane. So that's the reason why it's such a small percentage in the overall picture. Whereas if you are one of those people who has ever been on a plane, then flying will take up the majority of your carbon footprint. To put that to illustrate in terms of tons of carbon and the other activities you can do, if you fly transatlantic, per passenger, you're responsible for about 2 tons of carbon, depending on exactly where you're touching down, but it's around about 2 tons of carbon.
Yep.
If you, some models of car, if average mileage for a year would generate exactly the same amount of carbon. So you can create as much pollution from one flight as you can from driving for a year.
Really?
So it kind of, that puts it into perspective a little bit.
Sure.
Back to the kind of global picture, lots of people say, but the fast fashion industry is responsible for 20% of global emissions. The animal agriculture industry is responsible for 15% of global emissions. So shouldn't we just stop buying fast fashion and go vegan?
Yeah.
Well, we should absolutely be doing those two things. We're at the point here where we drastically need to reduce our emissions in all areas.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be reducing aviation because it's only responsible for 2% of global emissions.
No, yeah, of course.
The fact is, everybody eats and everybody clothes themselves.
Sure.
Not everybody flies.
But you can do it in a better way.
Yes, but my point is that's why those figures are as they are.
Right.
Everybody in the world eats.
Yeah.
Everybody in the world clothes themselves, and of course,
But you could eat less meat, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not stop totally, but you can eat less meat. It's probably going to work out cheaper for you as well, I would say.
Of course, there are huge benefits in terms of eating less meat, yes. But yeah, that kind of puts it into a bit of a perspective. We here in the West, we fly a lot. That's where our carbon footprint is bumped up the most.
Okay, that makes total sense. What about carbon offsetting?
So offsetting is not an answer that we promote, simply
Why?
because, well, I suppose there are 3 aspects to this.
Yeah.
One is the time aspect. So when we fly, we emit carbon today, mostly in the upper atmosphere, which is there are many problems with emissions up high as opposed to emissions at ground level.
Why is that? What's the difference exactly?
So
if you know, just vaguely, I wouldn't know, to be honest. So.
It's called radiative forcing, and it means that you can at least double, or you can around about double the warming effect of that. Okay. Those emissions. That's the limit of my knowledge. I'm not a scientist.
No, that's fine. Yeah,
so emissions are worse if they're in the upper atmosphere.
They're high, the upper, okay.
Than, as opposed to at ground level.
Okay.
Anyway, so those emissions are being created today, now.
Yeah.
By offsetting, or by investing in an offset scheme, we are giving money to something that might, at some point in the future, perhaps absorb the amount of carbon that we just emitted.
Yeah.
If we're using trees as an example, because that's a very common one that we often refer to.
Yeah.
If we're planting trees, one tree will absorb roughly 1 ton of carbon, but it takes 30 years to reach the point where it will do that. Okay. There's no guarantee that tree will even reach 30 years old.
Most likely it'll just be 10 if they do it sustainable.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So there's no guarantee that trees will reach maturity, but we're kind of paying into the future to absorb the carbon emissions that we're emitting today. That doesn't make sense in terms of a payoff, a trade-off. It's not a trade-off.
Is it more to clear your mind, like I'm not doing something bad anymore because I'm carbon offsetting?
And that's the other reason that we don't promote it, because we're a behaviour change organisation. Yeah. And
it doesn't change the behaviour.
It doesn't change behaviour. It just gives us licence to continue our behaviour because we've paid for it, because we've offset it, because it doesn't count anymore.
But it's better than nothing, right?
No, I really.
You don't think so?
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't promote it at all. Okay. It's not necessarily better than nothing. Okay. It's
You really want people to stop flying
exactly,
less.
Yeah, I mean,
it's that simple. Yeah, okay.
There are some schemes that do absorb atmospheric carbon, but honestly, they should be happening anyway. We shouldn't be framing them as offsets.
Sure.
It's a case of reduction. That's what we really need to focus on.
Normally, money is not put into them because the government is not going to put money into it, is it? Not here. Maybe in Scandinavia, but not here.
Yeah. I mean, offsets.
Not
Lots of businesses offset things. Lots of industries encourage individuals to offset, but it's.
There's other arguments. Let's go to the next argument. Davos, World Economic Forum, just happened actually, and they said 1 in 10 jobs globally depend on travel. So they asked the question: how can we really, encourage travel at the same time being responsible? If people don't fly, it might be a little bit more difficult.
So I mean, the key word here is travel. So travel doesn't mean air travel.
Yeah,
exactly.
Gotcha.
We can still have we can still have travel without flying.
Yeah.
And it would just be different type of travel.
Sure.
Okay. The aviation industry involves lots of jobs. But again, it's not the only industry that supports lots of jobs. So
I don't think they talk about the aviation industry.
It's just simply the travel industry.
Travel industry, because a lot of people just depend on a lot of countries, depend on people tourism, and especially
Yeah, there are several aspects to this. I mean, one main thing is how many countries depend on tourism because we continue to go there. If we were to reduce that, would they be able to find other means of employment? And the answer is probably yes. There are many places that now suffer from over-tourism.
Sure.
And
in Europe.
And our own tourist industry here is struggling. So shouldn't we support our own tourist industry by, travelling within our own...
In a way, yes. In a way, there's no sunshine here in this country, is there?
I wouldn't say there's no sunshine here in this country. We do actually have really good summers.
I know.
Perhaps it's not as reliable as some places in the world, but we do have good summers, and we do. The sunshine today has been glorious, and it's something that we kind of just assume the weather here is crap because it's something we joke about a lot.
Yeah.
But actually, I spend a lot of my summers here in the UK, and I always get a really good tan.
Okay, brilliant. Now, I did an interview with a gentleman from Guyana just a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact. And there was a few articles in the newspaper there because Guyana found oil, and I've been to Venezuela as well, and the country is totally ravaged. And you go into certain places and they say, well, they just found oil, and here, come back in 10 years' time, you will not recognize it, will be gone. Now, there is rainforest in Guyana. As a matter of fact, the whole country is green. And they say, without tourism here, they're not going to support it whatsoever. And, well, obviously, the Guyanan government might put money into it. I think they will, as a matter of fact. But still, part of it will just, at a certain point, money talks. And the environment, walks.
You're absolutely right. But... Yeah. Are you saying that the tourism industry is protecting the forest, which would otherwise be cut down?
Not only that,
if
people see, sometimes people see a certain environment and they see that, we should protect this.
And we should protect it, not for the tourism though. We should protect it for the environment's sake.
Absolutely, but if locals, tourists don't go there, don't you think that it will be a lot less? And, what they say, and that is from The Guardian, the newspaper, they say that take away the tourists and the need for an income would soon drive these communities into the arms of loggers, ranchers, gold miners and oil men, and in particular at this point the oil man, because oil is all underneath the Amazon there as well. So they might extract it from outside, but it will cost a lot less money, and the government will take a lot more money when they just go straight in there, cut everything down, and that's a carbon sink,
It's a very difficult picture, and we have to think of it in a circular way. So what is the oil needed for? To fuel our fossil fuel high lifestyles, right?
For cars, even for even
planes.
electrical bikes or electrical scooters here in the UK, which are going to be approved now, which I think is fantastic. But still, electricity has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but my point is, we're yes, oil is like gold because it is the commodity that we rely on the most. We are addicted to fossil fuels, and we need to stop. It might well, in a particular instance, tie into the tourism in that country, but that is not the whole picture.
Right.
We need to be looking at this picture as a whole.
Right. But if people don't see it, if they don't go to Antarctica, they don't see the glaciers melting, it doesn't come in the news that much. And people.
Well, you don't need to see it with your own eyes. We know
No?
the glaciers are melting.
Sure, you know it, but sometimes it's better to get in contact with these environments, and that gives you a whole different perspective of the world and of the environment as well.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't think, though, that our 64% of flights for leisure are all for people to open their eyes to the world's problems. Mostly they're probably just so you can lie on a beach and drink cocktails.
True enough. Okay. Okay, so that was that. Now, we already talked about BA a little bit. Basically, what he says, we're not going to make any changes over the next 30 years with regards to carbon-based fuel.
No, it's... People often say, oh, green fuels, biofuels, synthetic fuels. These are developments and technology fixes that are a long way in the future and further away in the future than we have. So 30 years, did he say?
He said, he just said it actually just a couple of months ago. And what he said is, first of all, that they make their commitments to net zero carbon flying by 2050. And what he also said, and I'm quoting here from The Guardian, we will continue to use carbon-based fuel throughout. We don't see a credible alternative. And
that's the sad fact, the sad truth of it. Now, if we look at other timescales that we've been given, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has given us a single decade to drastically slash our emissions. And so here we have the boss of BA admitting that there's no feasible way to significantly reduce the amount of carbon-intensive fuel that is used over the next 30 years. Yeah. Well, those two things don't add up. We have to drastically slash our emissions. Yeah. Therefore, we cannot rely on technological fixes. They won't be ready in time.
Is biofuels better for the environment, you think? Because there's a lot of debate about that. They say you need a lot more ground to cover. The Amazon will be cut down.
You're absolutely right. So one of the main sources of biofuels is palm oil, and we know how awful really palm oil is. It is a leading driver of deforestation, which is a massive environmental problem. So no, biofuels are not the answer.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. So then organisation here in the UK who actually brought me to you, AEF, they said offsetting will not get us to net zero, and there's other things that we have to do. You obviously agree with that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Technology has its role to play here, but we can't pretend that technology will fix, will allow us to continue to expand at the current projected rate, or deal with the current demand even. So the answer is to slash demand and use the available technology for the rest.
Okay. All right, and there's other topics to consider as well. There was an article here in the newspaper, in The Guardian once again, by the way. I don't know why all of these articles come from The Guardian, probably because it's a responsible newspaper maybe. What do you read?
I read The Guardian. I read everything because we need to keep abreast of what everybody's saying.
Yeah.
But it tends to be those papers, The Guardian, The Independent reports quite a lot on this as well. The Times tends to Telegraph a bit.
A little bit.
But mostly it's The Guardian reporting on environmental issues.
Okay, they say how to book the perfect holiday without any flying. They say revival of sleeper trains and interrailing, which is what we just talked about. And what they say, despite uncertainties around the impact of Brexit, 54% of Britons plan to travel to Europe in 2020. Probably to the sun, to Spain or something, right?
Yeah, great. Yeah, you can get to Spain on the train.
Yeah, how long does it take?
It's a lovely journey, so it depends which part of Spain you're going to, of course. If you're going to somewhere in northern Spain or Madrid, then it's a nice, easy journey. Barcelona as well, they're pretty easy. So you would go on the Eurostar to Paris, and then you would change to a TGV and that will take you straight to Madrid or Barcelona. Then you can change to an AEV, which is the Spanish high-speed trains. And so if you were to go further afield, then you can go straight down to Malaga.
That's a lot of stopovers though, isn't it?
Interchanges, not necessarily.
Okay, yeah.
So, from London to Paris, it's, an hour and a bit. It depends what the connections are, but you can get to Paris in a couple of hours and then down to Barcelona in 4 more hours.
Right. How long is that altogether already?
So that's 6 hours, but again, depending on how long you have to wait for your connection.
Yeah.
By the way, there's a great website that helps with all of this information. The Man in Seat 61.
Man in Seat 61. That's a very long name for that. The Man in Seat 61.com?
No, so the web address is seat61.com.
Okay, seat61.com.
Yeah. And he is a rail travel guru, and he's got every piece of advice that you want for every single journey you'd ever want to do by overland means, and mostly by train. He's fantastic. That's a really good encyclopedic resource that you can use to find out all the details of all these journeys.
Right.
But yeah, so if you're wanting to travel to southern parts of Spain, then trains down from Madrid will take you to, Costa del Sol, etc.
Yep.
So, I mean, even then over to Gibraltar, and then from there, you can even go to Tangier. So we're talking about, that Northern Africa is open to us as well by train.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
And if that takes in total 2 days, then that's the start of your holiday. That 2 days on a train is very exciting.
I spoke with another British gentleman the other day. He said you have like 4 weeks of holiday here. It's like 20, 25 days a year or something like that. So you can easily do that here, right? Because in America, they have like 1 or 2 weeks a year, which is like...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I had not heard that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we tend to take maybe a couple of weeks of holiday in the summer and then, spread the rest around. So that, for a typical sort of 2-week holiday, if you're going to Malaga, you spend 2 days traveling, 2 days getting back.
Yep.
You've got 10 days on a beach. Who doesn't want to spend 10 days on a beach,
Yeah, that's why they go there, I'm sure. But absolutely. And it's obviously a very nice journey. I've done it myself. I've actually been all the way by train to Greece, and from there boat all the way to Africa, and then all the way through. It is lovely, but it takes more time. And in the end, it's a little bit more expensive at the moment. And I hope that changes, obviously. And then it says, we talked about it already as well, you can always stay in the UK.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And there's plenty to discover here.
Yeah.
And, I'm a massive advocate of discovering more about the UK.
Mm-hmm.
I did an adventure of cycling around the coast of Britain once.
All the way around?
Yeah, I went all the way around.
All the way around?
England, Scotland and Wales.
Wow, how long did it take you?
It took me 10 weeks. It was 4,000 miles.
It's not bad.
Went a little bit. It was quite quick, actually. But the point of doing that was because I wanted to discover more about this country, this island that I live on.
What was the weather like during those 4 weeks? 10 weeks, sorry.
10 weeks, yeah. So it was varied, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I had my fair share of getting absolutely soaked to the skin, but then I also had blistering days where I just couldn't wait to get my bikini on and get in the sea kind of
really?
thing. So
yeah, okay, yeah.
It was wonderful. And
that was only England, or was it all the way around
all the way
Scotland?
around Scotland and Wales as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
And the main thing it showed me was how lucky we are to live somewhere so incredibly varied and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no limit to how much you can discover. So even though most of my adventuring, touring, holidaying, exploring has been within the UK, I still haven't seen everything. There is still so much more to see. If I want better weather, then yes, I can go to the Mediterranean by train.
Mm-hmm.
If I want mountains other than the mountains in Scotland, then I can, again, go by train to the Alps. Mm-hmm. There are so many places that we can go, and there are so many, every type of holiday that you might want, we can have it here within the UK, within Europe.
Yeah. Is it more expensive accommodation, food here in the UK if you go to Spain? It's not anymore because of the drop of the pound, but the pound is going up again now. Mm-hmm. So
it can be, yeah.
Depending on where you stay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Western Europe in general is quite expensive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So yeah, it depends where you're going.
Yeah, but obviously, if you have a family or something like a family of a few kids, 2 kids maybe, then obviously
but there are loads of places. It does, yeah. But there are loads of family-friendly holiday places. I mean, the classic one here is Centre Parks. Everyone remembers going to Centre Parks. That's like a highlight of their kind of childhood.
Right.
And there's loads of other places like that. So yeah, we definitely shouldn't overlook the stuff that we've got here.
Then there's a guy who didn't want to fly, in an article, once again, The Guardian. And he said, so I took a cargo ship and took him 14 days, but he spent a significant amount of money, like 1,500 euros altogether to get there, which is a lot. You can fly to Canada for 400 quid return. Mm-hmm. So that's like 4 times as much. Same story as the train really here in Europe.
Yeah.
that can change. But not many people have time to go on a cargo ship to another continent, I would say. But
yeah, so cargo ship is an option that some people take.
yeah,
It's a very specific type of option, though. As you just illustrated, it's not a viable option for most people who want to cross an ocean. However, it can be if the emissions-wise, it's a huge reduction in emissions compared to the plane. Something like 40 times less polluting if you travel by ship. For the equivalent journey. Even though shipping is a very polluting industry as well, per journey, the emissions are very, very vastly different between shipping and aviation. So you're right, it is an expensive, long type of trip, but you shouldn't really compare it to a flight because you're not comparing like for like. If you travel across the ocean by ship, that is an experience you are never going to forget. That is 2 weeks of being as far away from human habitation as you have ever been, seeing the stars at night in a way that you've never seen them. They're quite luxurious. You don't have to sleep in a container, you know. They're quite luxurious. You've got a lovely cabin. You would eat with the crew every day. You know, everything's included in that price. So you're essentially on a floating hotel, but it's not a horrible cruise ship, which is really polluting and disgusting.
Well, some are better. There's one in Scandinavia, Hurtigruten, which is like totally sustainable now.
Okay. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So you're not paying for someone to fling you through the air as fast as possible and get it over with.
Yeah.
You are paying for a rich experience, learning about ocean life, having essentially a floating hotel. And people who have done it have travelled that way, not for their summer holiday, because that would be the duration of the summer holiday, but for other trips, and have said that was absolutely the highlight of the trip.
An experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, last topic here. Well, maybe you have some yourself as well, but it says here that women are willing to pay more than men for sustainable airline travel. And what do you reckon? Is that true?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I wouldn't have a comment on that one.
Fair enough. They say participants in the survey, I've done surveys myself, and the people that normally answer the surveys are the people who are really like involved.
Already switched on,
You're preaching to the choir, basically, is what you're doing here. But they say that they're willing to pay an extra 5%, 10% or 15%, but they wanted to see a 30% reduction in greenhouse gases, which seems to be unmeasurable, really, for tickets increase in price. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know either?
No, I don't know about that.
Brilliant. So where can people find you? Where are you?
So,
obviously you're in the UK, but online?
So our website is flightfree.co.uk.
Yep.
We have Twitter, which is at FlightFree 2020, and
FlightFree 2020.
Yeah, FlightFree 2020, and Instagram's the same.
Okay.
We're on Facebook as well, FlightFree UK.
And where can people sign up? On the website?
Yeah, so our sign up is on the front page of the website,
right?
And all the other pages as well. So yeah, and there's so much information on the website. So information about why we're doing this, and our Be Inspired page has lots of articles that we've written and that other people have written for us, sharing their travels. So there's a whole section on travel. So some of it is advice on, taking the train through Europe, for example. Some of it is trying to inspire people by sharing other people's stories. So we do have a story about a couple who came on a cargo ship, which is lovely to read.
Same kind of story as we just had, or different?
They came back from Singapore, so
right.
Different route but similar. And so the idea is that, like I said before, we want to inform people and inspire them, and we really hope that our entries on the website do that.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out. And
I'm sure you'll have a massive effect, just like anywhere else. So this the second year you're going into now, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And are you increasing the number?
Yeah, so we've got 5.5 people who've made our pledge already, and we are hoping to reach our target by the end of the year. But it's going to take a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we.
Do you get a lot of publicity, newspapers talking about you?
We do, and we feature frequently in the papers actually, as commentators on the industry, which is fantastic. So the topic is definitely being talked about much more than it ever has been. Well, not much more than it ever has been, because people have been, as I said, talking about this for decades. But it seems that the the audience is now there for it. So yeah, we're really getting the word out, which is a good thing.
Brilliant. Is there anything that you would like to say or promote or plug besides what we talked about?
Well, only that.
Yeah.
It's very easy to come up with all the reasons why you might not be able to take a pledge of taking a year off flying.
Sure.
But we do urge people to consider the practicalities of it and consider if they might be able to, in the context of the climate crisis that we face.
Yep.
You know, we're in a serious position now. We're in a serious situation. And we need to be making these difficult decisions, and we need to be choosing this difficult stuff before the choice is forced upon us.
Yeah.
It really is serious. So if we can inspire people to make those choices, then we stand a chance of having an impact. If we just leave it, we'll get to the point where we are forced to make these life-altering decisions, and that is not a place we really want to wait to be in.
Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So that was the podcast with Anna. It was great to have her on the show and very inspiring. I'll put all the links in the show notes. You can find the latest news on podcast.earth and atravelcompanion.com. Thank you for listening, and please tune in next time to A Travel Companion for the latest news on sustainable travel.